This video was recorded at the EA Sports FIFA 17 capture event. EA were kind enough to invite myself and a select few other YouTubers down to London to play an early access build of the game. As such, all of the player ratings aren't necessarily final, and they were also kind enough to cover all food and drink expenses for the day, so a massive thank you to them for that. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video though, and we'll jump into it right now. Hey guys, welcome to another career mode related video from the FIFA 17 capture event. Today we're going to be having a look at the Premier League budgets for all of the teams in the English Premier League. I also have videos coming out soon for the Bundesliga, Serie A and La Liga. So if you're interested in seeing them and you enjoy this video, make sure you drop the video a thumbs up rating and subscribe to the channel too to ensure that you get those. As you can see here though, we're going to start with Arsenal. And as you can see, they want a lot from you in the first season. Domestic success, continental success, and brand exposure all set to critical. So you have to perform in the league and in Europe if you want to ensure that you keep your job at Arsenal Football Club. Brand exposure is also critical, so you'll need to perhaps buy in a couple of marquee signings to sell extra shirts, with player names on the back, etc. Youth development is only set to medium for Arsenal, though, which I think is quite surprising because obviously Arsenal have a very good youth system and a lot of players come through it. But clearly on FIFA, the board don't necessarily expect that much of you in that regard, and obviously with the club being a huge club with massive financial prowess, they don't need any real expectations from you on the finance side. Your transfer budget will be around £77 million and the club worth is actually just peaking over £2 billion. 2 billion. So you're going to have a lot of money to spend at Arsenal, one of the biggest budgets in the Premier League. Let's have a look at Bournemouth now. As you can see there, a very different set of expectations. Low for domestic, continental and brand exposure. Financial position, though, is up at medium, so they are wanting you to ensure that you keep the money box and piggy bank ticking over, and youth development is set to very low. I would have thought that domestic success would have been a little bit higher than that, ensuring that you stay in the Premier League, but clearly the board don't feel it's that necessary, and you will have a transfer budget of just under £30 million, so that's still a huge budget for a club the size of Bournemouth. Of course, all of the massive TV deals that have been going through in recent times with regards to the English Premier League means that there is a lot of money available to almost every single team in this league, and you'll see that as we move through this particular video. Bournemouth finished 16th last year, and obviously they'll be looking to improve on that in the year to come. And another side that are hoping to stay in the Premier League next season is Burnley, as you can see on your screen. Also low for domestic success, continental and brand exposure. Financial, though, is high. They have a slightly smaller budget at 26 million. Obviously, being a recently promoted side, they aren't going to have as much money available to them as the sides that were in the BPL. In the BPL last season, it's the Premier League this year, not the BPL. Barclays aren't the title sponsor anymore. So if I do trip over myself and call it the BPL, do forgive me. It's like a decade's worth of habit that I'm still trying to force myself out of. But as you can see, club worth is 446 million for Burnley. Transfer budget just above 26 million pounds. There's enough there to do a lot of damage with. 26 million pounds is a lot of money. That matches a number of the budgets from larger teams in other top European leagues that you'll see in the future videos that I'll cover on the channel. So hopefully, if you want to do Burnley, you'll be able to succeed in the Premier League and keep yourself in the division, and then fingers crossed, theoretically, if you can keep yourself in the division, you should get a larger budget for season number 3. Moving on from Burnley, you can see we're now at Chelsea. This is the side I've been doing my little preview career mode with on the channel, so you already kind of know what the objectives are for this team if you've watched that series. Critical for domestic, continental, and brand exposure. Very low for financial, similarly to Arsenal. Big financial power in the world of football. Don't really need that many objectives financially, and youth development is quite low at Chelsea. Although we do have a few decent prospects coming through the youth development system. We have been a side in recent times that have much preferred to buy someone in as opposed to, kind of bringing through your own talent from the youth system. But there are a few good players in the youth system. Nathaniel Chalobah, Thomas Callas, obviously Ruben Loftus-Cheek's been breaking into the first team in the past 12 months or so. So Chelsea do have a number of good youngsters, but clearly it's not a priority for the board in this particular edition of a FIFA series. Transfer budget is massive at £84 million. Club worth is 1.6 billion, so not as high as Arsenal, but still pretty damned high, 1.6 billion. But that is a huge transfer budget. You could do a lot of work with that. And of course, Chelsea have already brought in players like N'Golo Kante and Michy Batshuayi in the transfer window that you'll start with in this save. So you can then add to that again with another set of massive transfer budget. And of course, David Luiz will be there on the full release as well. He wasn't at Chelsea in the build that we played at the capture event because transfer deadline day transfers weren't updated on the database that we played. But obviously, for full release, transfers will be updated for the game that you play. The next club we're looking at is, as you can see here, Crystal Palace. And whilst they had a solid season at times last year, they did end up finishing 15th and not too far off the relegation zone, so they'll be hoping for better, and as such you can see domestic success is set to medium here. Continental success and brand exposure is set to low. Financial though is also set to medium because they don't have that that larger amount of money, and that's reflected in the transfer budget you have available to you of quote-unquote only £32-ish million. So there is a lot of work to be done at Palace, and should you decide to take on that job, then you will have a lot of work to do to try and get them towards the top half of the table. Obviously, they've lost Yannick Bolasie, they've lost Dwight Gale, a couple of other players have left as well. They brought in a couple of players, like James Tompkins and Steve Mandanda, etc., but you are going to need to, to improve even further if you want to have any sort of chance of getting Crystal Palace towards the upper reaches of the Premier League table, and maybe even in the second season or third season, getting them into Europe. A side, however, that you could get into Europe, and a side that I'm hoping to get into the Champions League, is Everton. This is going to be the team that I start my first full career mode with once we get access to the full game at home rather than in an EA office. And as you can see, transfer budget of just over, or just under perhaps £45 million. I was going to say just over 40, but it's more just under 45, isn't it? Club worth is just over £750 million, and a mixture of expectations here. Everything seems to be of some importance to the board. High domestic success, presumably that would mean that they want you to qualify for at least the Europa League. Continental success is medium. Brand exposure is also pretty important, and then as you can see from the bottom two, financial and youth development aren't as important as just finishing in a decent position in the league. But Everton have made some good signings in the transfer window. They've also managed to, crucially, I think even more importantly for them, keep hold of players like Ross Barkley, Romelu Lukaku and Gerard Deulofeu. Unfortunately have lost John Stones to Manchester City, of course, but there's still plenty of talent there at Everton. They've brought in players like Yannick Bolasie, Ashley Williams and Idrissa Gana Gueye from Aston Villa, who got relegated, of course, last year. So Everton have a really good squad, and I'm hoping in my career mode that I start later on next week that, fingers crossed, we can have a really good time at Everton Football Club. Moving on from Everton, though, we have another newly promoted side, this time in the form of Hull City. Now, they have probably, I think, actually the smallest budget in the Premier League. It's the smallest one we've seen to this point, and I think it is the smallest that we will see. £19.4 million, which is still a lot of money, but with regards to the Premier League, it's really quite a small budget. Club value or club worth is just under 500 million. So club worth is actually higher than a number of other sides in the league, but the budget is pretty small, and as a result of that, as you can see, financial is critical from the board expectations. You need to improve the financial situation of Hull City Football Club if you want to compete in the Premier League and A, stay up, and B, make progress after staying up the resulting seasons after that. Domestic success, continental success and youth development are all very low. It seems to me though that despite the fact that it says very low, obviously you want to be avoiding relegation, so I think it's slightly twisted. What would be nice is that, domestic success, you would say, would be critical at Hull City. They want to stay up in the Premier League, but because the expectation is avoid relegation, it's registered as very low, and obviously win the league would be registered as critical. So it's not quite as reflective of the actual expectations themselves as perhaps it could be, but it's just easier for them at EA to rate them 1 to 5 with regards whereabouts in the league they want you to finish. So obviously just avoiding relegation is quote-unquote down as very low, but should be quite critical, or it will be, as far as you're concerned, quite critical. But brand exposure is medium, so perhaps a marquee signing or two to try and sell some shirts. But the most important thing by far at Hull City is the financial side of things. One side, though, that have a lot on their plate this year is Leicester City, last year's champions, of course. They'll be looking to have another very good season in the BPL, in the Premier League, there we go again, in real life, as they did last year. Presumably they won't challenge for the title, but they have made some good signings. They brought in Slimani from Sporting for a massive, massive fee. They have lost, of course, N'Golo Kante to Chelsea, but they did bring in Mendy from, I think he was at Nice. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think Mendy was at Nice. Was very, very good in Ligue 1 last year, and they'll be looking to strengthen further still through your additions with your £43.6 million that you'll be given, which is a substantial amount of money, similar to the budget that I'm going to have at Everton, in fact. So perhaps we'll be trying to fend off Leicester City from a few of my transfer targets when I come to record the series proper, when the full release comes out. But everything is medium, other than brand exposure, which is low. To be fair, they probably got enough brand exposure last season, to be fair, so they don't necessarily need any more of that. But medium domestic success, you would presume, is just to perhaps, finish in the top half. Medium continental success, they're probably just quite happy to be performing in the group stage of Europe anyway, so I wouldn't have thought they'll have wanted you to progress further or have been pushing you to progress further in the Champions League group stage. They're just happy to be involved in the competition. Of course, you'll get prize money from that as well, which will help towards the financial expectations and, of course, also your transfer budget. Moving on from Leicester, though, we come to another L letter, but a rather larger club. Liverpool FC is the next one. And after losing a manager halfway through last season and bringing in Jurgen Klopp, they only managed to finish 8th in the Premier League. And of course, they at Liverpool want much, much more than that. Domestic success is critical. Brand exposure also critical. Again, being a larger club with a lot of money in the bank, financial isn't as important. They're not putting that much emphasis on youth development at Liverpool either. However, Liverpool have brought through a few young players in recent times, although they have been having a tendency of selling them on, most notably Jordan Ibe in recent times, but players like John Flanagan still stay at the club, I suppose. But continental success is set to high. I don't think Liverpool have any continental football this season in real life, so you'll be able to concentrate solely on domestic success in Season 1, and then, providing that you can qualify, you'll have continental success for Season 2, and perhaps that would bump from high towards critical if you can qualify for the Champions League. You do have, however, a rather large transfer budget available to you of £61 million, so you can do a lot with that. Liverpool, of course, sold on players like Balotelli. Christian Benteke's gone to Crystal Palace as well, so you've got some room for movement. You bought in Sadio Mane in real life already. You'll also have Karius and Clavan, etc. So there's some work to be done with the squad, but Jurgen Klopp has already done some of the work for you. Moving on from Liverpool, though, we move to the first of the two Manchester clubs. Of course, Manchester City have a massive budget, as you can see there. £100 million is going to be the budget at Manchester City. The club value is £1.8 billion. Similarly to Chelsea, though, domestic success, continental success and brand exposure are all critical, as you would expect in one of the sides that should be challenging for the title year in, year out. And in real life, they've suffered and not been as good in the Champions League, although last year they did reach the semi-finals, of course. So they are getting there, but still some improvements needed from you guys when you take over at Manchester City. You want to win the Premier League, you want to win the Champions League, you want to sell some shirts as well, maybe bring in a few marquee signings to help with the brand exposure. Obviously brought in a few marquee signings already in real life, and you can add to that with pretty much whoever you want, really, for £100 million, other than perhaps Messi or Ronaldo, or maybe even Neymar. In my Chelsea mini-series that I've been doing so far, I did have an offer accepted for Gareth Bale, who's rated at 90, for £74 million. So you can kind of figure out there what sort of price you'd have to pay for like the 92 rated Neymar or Suarez, or 93 Messi, or 94 Ronaldo. Probably about £100 million. So you could bring in players like that, and obviously you have the opportunity to sell more players from the squad to raise extra cash. If City have a big budget at £100 million, you can see Manchester United have an even bigger one at £102 million. A massive, massive budget again, just edging it slightly on Manchester City. So perhaps the person that decided the transfer budgets for career mode was a Manchester United fan and wanted to just edge City out of it with regards to the biggest budget on the game. And I can confirm for you, Manchester United's budget is the biggest on the game transfer-wise. That, at least what I've seen so far from all of the footage I captured from the largest leagues around Europe, £102 million is the biggest budget that you will see on career mode. Club value is £3 billion, which is also the highest I've seen in any of career mode teams as well in all of the largest European leagues. So we'll be able to have that confirmed, of course, when you see the La Liga budgets and the Bundesliga budgets with regards Bayern Munich, Barcelona and Real Madrid. Man United, Biggest transfer budget on the game, biggest club worth on the game as well. Critical for the top three, as you might expect. Youth development medium, so they are wanting to bring through a couple of youth players, maybe even buy in a couple of youth players that are like under the age of 20, like we had the objective to do in the Chelsea mini-series that I've been running. Like I say, if you missed anything on the channel over the past few days, do check the channel page for it. This video is getting quite long now, but of course I wanted to have an in-depth look here so you guys can kind of plan your own my player or career, not my player, but your own career mode series for when the game fully releases, so you know exactly what you're going to get and what you need to achieve when you come to picking the side that you want to do your series with. So Manchester United, critical success in Europe and domestically, and also in brand exposure, and have a £102 million budget for you to achieve that particular task. The third and final promoted side, though, coming up from the Championship last season, were Middlesbrough. And they have a slightly larger budget than Hull. I think it was actually slightly less there, isn't it, than Burnley's. I think Burnley's was, what, 26 or 28? It's 24 million at Middlesbrough. Club value is about £500 million at 510 million. And again, domestic success and continental success, very low. Financial, though, success needs to be quite high, with you wanting to obviously ensure that you can maintain the club's overall worth and, of course, maintain your ability to be to have some sort of impact in the transfer window. They have brought in players like Victor Valdez and Alvaro Negredo in real life, so you have a half-decent couple of players in the squad already to help you try and achieve what you want to at Middlesbrough. And then 24 million first season is decent, and then obviously if you stay in the Premier League you'll get a much bigger budget, presumably in Season 2, from all of the extra TV money you'll get. So Middlesbrough, a side that you could definitely do some damage with over the course of a longer career mode, but first season the main aim is obviously going to be to survive in the Premier League. However, survival in the Premier League isn't the main aim for a club the size of Southampton. A £42 million transfer budget. They brought in Nathan Redmond in real life to replace Sadio Mane, but you might want to bring in another wide player at Southampton too. And as you can see, a decent sized budget to do that. Domestic success, continental success, brand exposure and financial all set at medium. But as is the case in real life, a very high emphasis placed on youth development. Southampton create some of the best youth players we've seen in England and British, I suppose, football as well, if you count Gareth Bale. So you want to be continuing that trend here in a series if you do it with Southampton Football Club. Very, very good, entertaining series to do, actually, Southampton. And I may do a Southampton series a little bit later on in the year if that's something you might like to see. Let me know in the comment section down below. Moving on from Southampton, though, a side that will be wanting to do slightly better and finish in the European spots is Tottenham Hotspur. They could potentially have won the league last year. They had to, unfortunately for them, though, settle for third spot in the Premier League table. High, 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 medium, high is their expectations for this season, and as you can see, a 58, nearly £60 million budget available to you to try and inflict some damage on the transfer window and improve the squad to, fingers crossed, challenge for the title yet again in the first season of FIFA 17 career mode. And with the squad available to you at Tottenham, you should be able to do that. If you aren't finishing top 4 with Tottenham on FIFA this year, then you're failing as far as I'm concerned. They have a great squad at Tottenham right now. Moving on from Tottenham, we can see that we are next at Stoke. And they finished 9th in the Premier League table last year. A very good season for a club the size of Stoke. A very big budget as well for a club the size of Stoke. £42-ish million. Medium on everything apart from youth development, which is very low. I can't say as I know of any players that have come through Stoke City's youth system in real life. If there are any, then do let me know in the comment section down below. But I can't think of any off the top of my head that have really kind of progressed towards the upper reaches of the game that have come through Stoke City's youth setup. So they aren't putting that much emphasis on that. You will have to buy your own talent in. But obviously they'd probably be wanting a top half finish, maybe pushing towards the Europa League qualification, maybe through a league finish, finishing top 6, or maybe through a cup win, or maybe even a cup final appearance against a side that finished top 4. We'll have to wait and see, but they do have a great squad at Stoke. Very, very impressive that they've been able to put together the sort of side that they have done over the past 3 or 4 years since Mark Hughes took over. So fair play to them. They've been playing some really nice football, attractive football at Stoke City, and they've kind of dubbed themselves, or have been dubbed by the media and the watching public, as Stoke-alona. So obviously they'll be looking to improve that, and obviously you might be able to improve that yourself. A side that are desperate for any sort of improvement whatsoever is Sunderland, of course. After finishing in 17th last year and just scraping survival at the hands of Newcastle, they will need a lot of work doing to that squad. A lot of work doing to that squad. I fancy Sunderland for relegation again in real life, even at the hands of David Moyes, who is a very capable manager, regardless of what a lot of Manchester United fans might say. £32 million isn't necessarily a big budget either, and financial is quite high on the rankings, with domestic and continental success being low. Brand exposure is at medium, so you will try and, of course, expand the reach of the Sunderland brand as a whole by perhaps selling more shirts, etc., and filling the stadium. But Sunderland's going to be a challenge, man. I don't envy anyone that decides to do a career mode with Sunderland, because that is not a team that is going to give you instant success by any stretch of the imagination. 3 teams to go then. 4 teams, in fact, sorry, to go. Swansea City are the first. Everything's set at medium apart from continental success and brand exposure, which is at low. Obviously, Swansea nowhere near European football. They finished 12th last year after starting the season very, very poorly. It cost Gary Monkey's job. He's now at Leeds, of course. £35 million isn't a big budget, actually. I would have thought Swansea would have had a little bit more than that, especially having sold Andre Ayew to Newcastle, to West Ham, who we'll come to in a moment. But Swansea, a decent side that you can definitely do something with. If you want to raise funds, you could perhaps think about selling players like Gylfi Sigurdsson, but he's a great asset to Swansea City, so personally I wouldn't recommend that. But Swansea will be able to do you something in the second season if you can build well, so should be a decent team to do a career mode with. Also a decent team to do a career mode with will be Watford. Again, a smaller budget on the side of £28 million, but if you can get Odion Ighalo firing the same way he did for the majority of last year, and of course Troy Deeney firing alongside him as well, then you should be able to have a decent career mode at Watford too. West Brom, on the other hand, a lot more difficult. Similar to Sunderland, I really expect a West Brom career mode to be quite difficult to be successful in initially, and it will take a lot of work to try and improve that squad to the point where you are comfortably staying in the Premier League each season. So that's going to be a more difficult one, but one that's slightly easier with a larger budget than 30 million that West Brom have there is West Ham. The London Stadium will be in the game. You will be able to play at the formerly named Olympic Stadium, of course, at Stratford. So West Ham fans will be pleased with that. And you'll also be pleased to see that you get a £53/54 million-ish budget to try and achieve what you can in the Premier League next year. Finished 7th, of course, in the league last year. Unfortunately for them in real life, got knocked out in the qualifiers for the Europa League this year for the second year in a row to the same team. However, they do have high domestic success and medium continental success, so they will be expecting you to do the same in real life as opposed to, well, as in qualify for the Europa League. And obviously, fingers crossed, you'll be able to do better than West Ham in real life and actually go through in the qualifiers for the Europa League and actually get into the group stage proper, where presumably with it being medium they'd like you to get to perhaps at least the first or second knockout rounds. But a really good budget there at West Ham. They've made some great signings already this season that you'll be able to start with there, like Sofiane Feghouli, like Andre Ayew, etc. So do ensure that West Ham are one of the sides that you play with this year, because whether it be on head-to-head or perhaps some West Ham players on Ultimate Team or even a West Ham Career Mode series, because they will have a very good side and they will be very, very good to use. I think Kizzle and I are thinking about using West Ham for our co-op Career Mode series this year. So do make sure that you subscribe to this channel to ensure that you get everything that's coming out over the next few days, and drop this video a like if you enjoyed. It's very, very long, but like I say, I wanted to give you an in-depth look at all of the options that are available to you, so you can make an educated decision rather than just stabbing wildly in the dark when it comes to selecting your first Career Mode team. But for now, that's all from me for this video. There will be plenty more uploaded today and yesterday and the previous few days and tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, so make sure you subscribe to the channel too. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.